as I've emphasized several times, what I really am looking for you to accomplish with the simulation is the ability to learn from what's happening in your company and make positive changes. So simply enough, you want to figure out what is working for you and do more of that, and what's not working for you and stop doing that. If you get into a turnaround situation, though, often the situation or the reasons are very complicated. And this is where when you can make a bunch of willy-nilly changes, you're not really sure from round to round what was positive and what wasn't, because you had so many things that you were changing that you're not sure really what's the source of traction. So I caution you about just blowing up your business model every round, because you're never going to get a feeling for what's working and what's not. One of the ways to figure out what is working, though, is to look very carefully at your competitors, and we'll talk about more about that later. I think I've already emphasized the idea of making money, so let me go on to the last point. You are not going to feel 100% comfortable starting the simulation, even after the 2 practice rounds. Your knowledge of the simulation is still not perfect yet, and then there's a great deal of uncertainty about you don't know what your competitors are going to do. And so I have one particular piece of advice for you. Get over it. As a personal aside, every time I stepped into a significant promotion in jobs in the Air Force, my hands were always trembling a little bit, because there was a lot I didn't know, and there was certainly the specter of blazing failure. Well, I had to get used to that. And to be honest with you, any job that you feel completely confident stepping into, you know one of two things. Either A, you're overconfident, you're really not as smart as you think you are going in, or B, you're not stretching yourself. That new job is too much like the old job, not much growth going on. So it's going to be a little uncomfortable. It'll get better. Deal with it. I want to tell you how I'm going to interact with you. Some of you had Professor Forrester for your undergraduate strategy class, and you ran a simulation similar to this. One thing I do that's different to him is he pretty much got the students chilly and would ask a lot of questions and the like. I don't do that. I will step back until you ask me questions. To be honest with you, unless there is just such a burning fire in your company of poor performance, or if you're making such a clear mistake that is handicapping you, I probably won't say anything to you about your performance. I'm waiting for you to come to me. And you can come to me anytime, phone, email, text, whatever. Although face-to-face is obviously, over the phone is the easiest way to do it, just because it's the most efficient transfer of information. When you come to me, though, don't ask me a question like, what should we do? Ask me a question like, we tried X and it doesn't seem to be working and we're not sure why. Because I'm going to try to play the Oracle of Delphi role and just ask you a series of questions that's going to cause you to reach your own conclusions about what you should be doing differently. Next, we're going to have 2 practice rounds. You should learn a whole lot during that. Now, the second practice round is optional, and historically about half the teams choose to participate in it, so I want to put a caveat in there. I will sometimes have people that will launch off in strategy once the real simulation begins, and they'll do something that's very curious, which is to say it didn't work well, and they will go back and say, well, we tried it in the second practice round and it worked great. Remember, about half the teams aren't playing in the second practice round, and they don't know what, and the other teams don't know what they're doing, so really hard to get a great vector on what's going to work great from that practice round. In fact, I usually encourage people, don't step out and be incredibly bold in round 1, because you don't want to make a mistake that, for example, causes you to produce way too many shoes, because that's very hard to recover from. You'll see that I built in an informal board of directors meeting. There's actually guidance about the products you're supposed to bring. And we do this about the midpoint of the simulation, and I try to do this to make sure that you're focusing on the issues that are driving your performance, and you're thinking about ways that you can improve that performance. And then lastly, as I've already hinted, at the end of the semester is a formal board of directors presentation where I bring in general managers from many of the major manufacturing plants in the area. To me, it is the capstone experience of your MBA. It calls upon all the skills that you supposedly have been acquiring in your MBA. You've got the ability to make a persuasive presentation, which includes not only your oral delivery, but also how you build the charts. you've got a live case where you're drawing on all your functional knowledge, where you have to decide what the critical issues are, do analysis that supports your thinking about those critical areas, and then present those findings in a persuasive manner such that if you've done well in BSG, the board is motivated to say, we have a great management team, we need to give them a bonus to keep them here. If you didn't do so well, the board says, we paid a lot for their scholarship so that they learn these things, but we're confident that they've now learned them and are ready to lead our company on a better path in the future. So let's not fire them, let's keep them on. It's going to be an enjoyable evening, I guarantee you. And what it's going to force you to do is to go back and think how you did, why you did, and what should you have done to have done better, which is going to reinforce the learning in the simulation. In the next video, we're going to be at the computer screen as I briefly introduce you to what you're going to see in BSG. Join me in a minute.